What's going on, everyone? We have made it to week 9 in the NFL, and as usual, I have got my weekly NFL game picks for you outright against the spread along with my locks of the week, so let's get right into it. Kicking things off on Thursday Night Football, we have got the Oakland Raiders at the San Francisco 49ers, and man, not a whole lot of wins between either of these two teams. Raiders at 1-6, the 49ers at 1-7, and both these squads coming off of losses in Week 8. The Raiders versus the Indianapolis Colts in a game where they did put up some points, but, realistically, that game was never in danger of being lost by the Colts, while the 49ers' tough divisional loss to the Arizona Cardinals. So the question becomes, who wants to win this game more? And I have to give the edge to the 49ers here, even though both of these squads are going to be in contention for the first pick overall, which might end up being a factor in the long run. Right now, I think the 49ers are in a better position. First of all, defensively, I think the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL. So the 49ers will be able to move the ball against them. Not that the 49ers are a shining example of what defense should look like in the league this year, but ultimately, I do think the Raiders have more issues on that front. And then, secondly, Kyle Shanahan as a play caller, I got to give him a lot of credit because he still managed to keep some games competitive offensively for the 49ers without Jimmy Garoppolo, without Jerick McKinnon, without a lot of their stars. So for that reason, I got to give the edge to the 49ers, especially with them being at home. I like them to win this game. I do think there will be some points put up in this game. Neither of these defenses are elite. I could see Derek Carr having a good game, but ultimately, I like the 49ers to win this game outright on the spread, -2.5. I'll go ahead. I'll take the over because, like I said, I think this Raiders defense is just too porous at this point in time, and the 49ers will be able to come up with a victory larger than 3 points. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Washington Redskins. The Falcons, 3-4, coming off the bye week, face the Washington Redskins, who are 5-2, beating the New York Giants last week. And on paper, you look at this game, home game for the Redskins going up against a porous Falcons defense. Maybe you say they should be favored in this contest. But honestly, I do think the Redskins are not as good as their record suggests. And if I had to go ahead and pick a team long run who I have more faith in as far as reaching the playoffs, I got to go with the Falcons. To me, that offense is just too good. And as good as Alex Smith can be at being a protector of the football and not turning it over, I just don't think on a week-to-week basis he has that stat production that you need to be relevant offensively. Whereas Matt Ryan with Julio Jones, a guy in Calvin Ridley, and Tavon Coleman, I think that combination is a lot more deadly than what Alex Smith can provide. And I just don't think that rushing attack of the Redskins will be able to keep up fast-pace-wise with what the Falcons can do through the air. And then when the Redskins ask Alex Smith to go ahead and put the game on his shoulders, I just think that's going to be too much for him to do. And even though I do think it'll be a close game because the Redskins can do some nice things defensively, ultimately I just have more faith in the Atlanta Falcons getting those big plays, being more clutch with the playmakers they have offensively. So I'm picking the Falcons to win this game outright. I have more faith in Matt Ryan than Alex Smith. That's what it ultimately comes down to. And I actually think Matt Ryan should be getting some MVP considerations in the quarterback position this year. But that's a conversation for another time. As far as the spread goes, -1.5 for the Redskins. So they are favored in this game. But like I said, I've just got a lot more faith in that Falcons offense. Even though they're on the road, I'll take them on the spread. Moving on, we've got the Chicago Bears at the Buffalo Bills. The Bears 4-3 after beating the New York Jets last week, while the Bills 2-6 after losing to the New England Patriots, somewhat as expected. And unfortunately for the Bills, I think this will be a similar situation. Look, I realize Buffalo, tough place to go ahead and play in, potential trap game for the Bears, but this comes down to one big issue, and that is, who are the Bills going to bring out at quarterback? And that's a legitimate question. Derek Anderson took some really big hits late versus the Patriots. Josh Allen's still nicked up. Is it going to be Peterman? And for as much as I think Mitchell Trubisky still needs to improve as a quarterback, he's better right now than anyone the Bills can go ahead and provide in this game at quarterback. The Bears offensively, they have more playmakers. Defensively, they have more playmakers. Even though guys like Allen Robinson, Khalil Mack are questionable for this game. If there was ever a time for them to miss a contest, it would be right now versus the Buffalo Bills. They need those big names available for contests versus the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. Those are going to be the big time contests for the Bears. But this one should be an easy win for the Bears. Now, ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if it's lower scoring and if it's closer than it should be, as we saw with the Bears and the Jets last week, where the Jets, after a touchdown late in that fourth quarter, they had a shot versus the Bears, but ultimately the Bears did what they had to and closed out that game. So ultimately what I'm trying to say is, even though I like the Bears outright, the spread is where it'll be interesting here, because plus 8.5 for the Buffalo Bills. And honestly, if the Bills had the quarterback situation figured out and they could at least say who they would play, I'd say the Bills would cover the spread. But because of the injury-riddled nature of that position for them right now, I gotta go ahead. I'll give the Bears the edge here on the spread. I say they can go ahead and cover by at least 10 points. Next up, we have got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Cleveland Browns. The Chiefs took care of business as expected last week versus the Broncos, now 7-1, while the Browns 5-1 after losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And not only did they lose there, but then they continued to lose after they lost their head coach and offensive coordinator. Now Greg Williams upgraded to head coach interim status. And this will be interesting because he's not exactly the most offensive-friendly play caller. I do think this will set back that offense with Baker Mayfield a little bit. And this is a tough team, the Kansas City Chiefs, to go ahead and try and make up that ground for the Cleveland Browns, especially offensively. We know the Chiefs are going to come at you and come at you hard. They're going to put up some points. And I just think there's going to be too much upheaval offensively for the Cleveland Browns here. They're going to be trying to do too many new things unless Greg Williams just says, keep doing what you've been doing and I'm still only going to handle the defensive situations here. It'll be really interesting to see what kind of Cleveland team comes out here. But look, bottom line, even if Hugh Jackson didn't get fired, I would be picking the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game. Baker Mayfield just can't keep up with Patrick Mahomes and all the weapons that the Chiefs have. For that reason, I like the Chiefs to win this game outright on the spread, plus 8.5 for the Browns. The fact that all those firings took place just confirms my conviction in taking the Chiefs on the spread as well. Continuing on, we've got an NFC divisional clash. The Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. Both these teams coming off of losses. The Lions 3-4 lost to the Seattle Seahawks, while the Vikings 4-3-1 lost to the New Orleans Saints. And this will be an interesting contest, not only because it's a divisional matchup, because also the Detroit Lions made some moves by going ahead and trading Golden Tate to the Philadelphia Eagles. So it'll be interesting, in my opinion, to see how that offense reacts. Who are the guys that are potentially going to take Tate's spot in the slot? I think that'll be something interesting to see how that offense is transformed, if at all. I think Marvin Jones becomes a much bigger focal point in this offense, and potentially that passing attack can lose a step. I think it'll be easier to go ahead and lock them down. We will see, however, but ultimately, even if this trade didn't take place, I'd say I like the Minnesota Vikings more so in this game. It's a home game for them. I could see the Lions and the Vikings splitting their series. It's that type of battle with these two teams. I'll go ahead. I'll take the Minnesota Vikings at home. To me, offensively, they're just too good. Even though they struggled versus the New Orleans Saints and Kirk Cousins had his fair share of turnovers, the combination of Diggs, Thielen, and Kirk Cousins is just too much. I like that combination more so than Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, and Matthew Stafford. So give me the Minnesota Vikings at home to win this game outright. On the spread, minus 4.5. I actually think it could be closer. I think it'll be a hard-fought game. I think the Detroit Lions have the ability, just as well as the Minnesota Vikings, to get you on those deep plays. So I'm actually going to take the under on the spread. Switching gear to an AFC divisional matchup, we've got the New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. The Jets sit at 3-5 after losing to the Chicago Bears, while the Dolphins 4-4 after losing to the Houston Texans. And with this game, look, the Jets, in my opinion, still have too many injuries offensively that just aren't helping Sam Bradford. And even though the Miami Dolphins, Brock Osweiler and all, They've been making some plays. Devontae Parker finally showed up. I like what I see from Danny Amendola. Kenyon Drake seems to be making some improvements steadily. Frank Gore isn't going anywhere, as old as he is. So offensively, I actually like the Miami Dolphins. Home game for Miami too. The Jets, they can struggle on the road. So I give the slight edge to the Miami Dolphins. Again, it's a divisional matchup. These two teams, they're similar in records. I don't think either of them are world beaters. I think they're average at best. So to me, it's close to a coin flip, but because the Dolphins are at home, because they aren't dealing with as many big injuries, and Sam Bradford still has the rookie factor, I give the Miami Dolphins the edge here. I like them to win this game outright. The spread -3.5. Since I do think it'll be a pretty close game, I think it's going to be settled right by a field goal. I will say I'm taking the under on the spread. Next, we have another divisional contest with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers 4-2-1 after beating the Browns, while the Baltimore Ravens 4-4 after a tough loss to the Panthers, where that defense got exposed a little bit, and the Panthers pretty much controlled the pace of that game throughout. So now, Baltimore has to rebound, but tough opponent to do so against with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, I realized the first time these two teams played, the Baltimore Ravens pretty much handled the Steelers. They were able to limit James Conner, which was a big factor. Now, the thing is, the Steelers, I think, have gotten better all around since then. They're hitting on more cylinders. The chemistry is better. They're on a nice win streak. Antonio Brown much more involved. James Conner, I think they've figured out how to use him better slightly every single week. And I don't think that the Baltimore Ravens are going to be able to shut down that rushing attack as well as they did last time. Even if they do, I think James Conner will be a factor in the passing game. And this will be a big contest in terms of determining who proceeds forward with the division. And honestly, I got to favor the Steelers here. I think that offense is just too good. I think they figured some things out. Usually this is a series that is split. Baltimore won the first one. I wouldn't at all be surprised if Pittsburgh wins this game, even though it's on the road. To me, they're just have more of the mojo right now. And I'll take them to win this game, Le'Veon Bell or not, considering all that drama that's been going on. Right now, they're just finding ways to win football games. So I'll take the Steelers on the road. I think it'll be a hard-fought game. I think it'll be a game that's decided late, but I still like the Steelers. The spread, -2.5, might as well be a pick'em for me. So for that reason, I will go with the Steelers because I do think at the end they eke this game out. Continuing on, we've got another divisional clash, the Tampa Bay Bucks at the Carolina Panthers. The Bucks 3-4 after a tough loss to the Bengals where, look, they had another quarterback change. Surprise, surprise. It's Jameis Winston getting benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Fitzmagic almost did it again. He led the Bucks back to tie that game, but just too little too late as the Bengals got the game-winning field goal. However, Fitzpatrick's set to start this game versus the Panthers, who are 5-2, coming off a very impressive win versus the Baltimore Ravens. And a lot of times the issue for the Panthers has been slow starts offensively. Well, what's the perfect remedy to that? It is facing one of the worst defenses in the league in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I do think this could be a little bit closer than people expect. The Bucks love to pass the football, and the Panthers still have some issues in the secondary. They're more so better equipped defensively at the front seven position. So I do think they will still get to the quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I could see this being a higher scoring game than people predict, especially on the front of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But when it's all said and done, I like the Panthers at home. They play well there. I just think that Cam Newton is going to be able to do too many things versus the Bucks defense. I think, again, Cam Newton is a guy that should be in the MVP consideration at the quarterback position. Him and Norv Turner have done some really nice things this season, and I think they will continue to do so versus the Bucks. Give me the Panthers to win this game outright. I think the Bucks are going to have a chance to potentially tie the game late, something like that. Assuming it'll be a 7-8, maybe 10-point score. As far as the Bucks trailing late in the fourth quarter, we will see. But basically, the spread -6.5 for the Panthers. I think they'll be able to cover. I think that front seven will get to Ryan Fitzpatrick late and secure them the victory by at least a touchdown. So I like the Panthers on the spread. Moving on, we have got the Houston Texans at the Denver Broncos. And even though these two teams might not be in the same place right now, divisional ranking wise and record wise. Houston at 5-3, Denver at 3-5. This is still a really interesting matchup because primarily the trade we saw earlier this week, Demaryius Thomas to Houston following the Will Fuller injury, now potentially going to face his former teammate. We'll see how involved he is, if at all. And then Courtland Sutton now has an opportunity to seize that wide receiver 2 role. Will that happen? Now, on paper, I think maybe a lot of people would say the Houston Texans could win this game. They should win this game. They've looked pretty good. They've bounced back. They're first place in the division. Deshaun Watson has looked good. DeAndre Hopkins is dominating. Now they get Demaryius Thomas. But let's be honest. I think if there is a potential upset, which if you go ahead and ask the bettors in Vegas, this wouldn't be one actually, because the Broncos are favored by -2.5. But still, the Denver Broncos could get this game victory because if they can limit the rushing attack, the success the Texans have had, and they can hit Deshaun Watson, I wouldn't at all be surprised if Denver wins. But ultimately, I do have more faith in Deshaun Watson. I think he can do more nice things than Case Keenum. And right now, I think it's easy to see that the Broncos are in a little bit of a sell mode with Demaryius Thomas getting shipped. There were talks that Emmanuel Sanders could get shipped. And the Denver defense ultimately hasn't been as good as we have seen in years past. I think DeAndre Hopkins can have a big game. I wouldn't be surprised if Demaryius Thomas has a big game. I like the Houston Texans on the road, but I do think it'll be very, very close and a very interesting contest throughout. I'll take the Texans outright on the spread, -2.5, like I said, pretty much a pick 'em. So for that reason, I will stick with the Texans. Next up, we have the LA Chargers at the Seattle Seahawks. The Chargers 5-2, while Seattle is 4-3 after beating the Detroit Lions. And talk about another very interesting game that could go either way, honestly. I know the Chargers have been probably a little bit more consistent in my eyes this season, especially offensively. I think they've beaten some better competition as well. But Seattle is peaking at the right time, per usual. Russell Wilson looking like the Russell Wilson of old. The rushing attack with Chris Carson has looked really good. However, quick disclaimer, Carson did get added to that injury report late this week, so that'll be interesting to keep our eyes on. However, this comes down to Phillip Rivers versus Russell Wilson. Even though it's in Seattle where the Seahawks do play better, where the 12th man is a factor, I still think the Chargers have as many weapons as you could want to contend with the Seattle Seahawks and offset that advantage. Keenan Allen, Williams, Tyrell, and Mike Williams, that is, on top of Melvin Gordon. I think Russell Wilson does have a little bit of an advantage, obviously, rushing the football. But I got to go with the Chargers here. It's pretty much a pick 'em because Seattle actually favored at -1.5. If this game was in LA, I'd be going with the Chargers, no doubt, on the spread. But here I am a little bit more hesitant. I will still pick the Chargers outright. Since it's almost a pick 'em, I got to go with them on the spread as well. To me, the deciding factor here is they have just been more consistent offensively. They have looked more dominant at times. And I do think Seattle, to some degree, has taken advantage of some struggling teams to get back to 4-3. So for that reason, I will go with the Chargers here. Moving on, we've got the LA Rams at the New Orleans Saints, the first of two marquee matchups this week. The Rams obviously still undefeated at 8-0, but they got a scare versus the Green Bay Packers. But ultimately, Ty Montgomery had other things to say about that. Then the New Orleans Saints don't look now, but at 6-1, they're not too far behind from the Rams. And I've been saying it all year. These are the two best teams in the NFC, and this game has huge playoff implications. Both teams are going to give it their all. Because if the Rams can win this game, I think, in my opinion, they pretty much wrap up the first seed in home field advantage. Whereas if the Saints can win, it's going to be a very interesting remainder of the season. And we know how much the Saints value home field advantage. And this game being played in New Orleans now, it'll be a big deciding factor. I realize the Rams probably have more offensive weapons here, with Todd Gurley looking like an MVP candidate, with Cooper Kupp set to return, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and then Jared Goff has looked good. But can he continue to outduel other quarterbacks, with Drew Brees now being the next guy up? And honestly, I got to give the edge to Drew Brees here. I think this will be an offensive showdown. I think it'll be a game that is decided late. I think it will be a close game. But ultimately, I have more faith in Drew Brees. In New Orleans with Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, he has more than enough weapons as well. I just like the more seasoned quarterback here in this scenario. New Orleans, very tough place to play. And I'm going to go ahead pick the Saints to win this game outright. I think on the spread, it's pretty much a pick 'em. The Saints actually favored at -1.5. I think that's really close. That's how I would probably set this line myself. So since it's pretty much a pick 'em game, I'm going with the Saints on the spread and what could be the most interesting game of the week, if not all year. Getting to Sunday Night Football, we have our second marquee matchup of the week with the Green Bay Packers at the New Orleans Saints. Rodgers versus Brady. Green Bay is at 3-1 after that tough loss to the Rams, whereas the Patriots 6-2 after taking care of business versus the Bills. And for the Green Bay Packers, this game is definitely a lot more important for them because if they lose, they fall to 3-4-1. And, you know, that's going to be tough. Whereas the New England Patriots at home, not as much pressure on them in my opinion. I think this will be a high-scoring affair either way. I think it will be a close game. I think it'll be a game that's decided late. However, I give the advantage to the New England Patriots. They are at home. The Green Bay Packers, they traded away Clinton Dix. Maybe that's a trade that went under the radar with some of the offensive talent that we saw getting traded. But I think Tom Brady is very happy he doesn't have to face in that secondary. And the New England Patriots have just as many weapons as the Green Bay Packers, if not more, honestly. James White, Sony Michel, potentially set to return this game. And then Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski. Whereas the Green Bay Packers, I do think we'll see some nice things from Aaron Jones now. Devontae Adams is always a factor. But I just think New England has more weapons. And I do think they'll be able to go ahead and slow down Aaron Rodgers when it matters most. I like them at home to win this game outright. As far as the spread goes, however, -5.5 for New England. I'm actually going to take the over. I think the New England Patriots are the better team overall. I think they're more well-balanced offensively. This is a home game for them. I think it'll be a close game, but then they end up winning by a touchdown late in that game. And finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe not as much of a marquee matchup as we would like. Both these teams are 3-4 coming off the bye week. But still, I think it'll be an interesting contest. We've got the Amari Cooper factor here. How will he play in his first game for the Cowboys? How will that affect the running attack, if at all? Personally, I think Ezekiel Elliott will have a nice game here after the struggle that he had prior to the bye week. I think I expect a 100-plus yard rushing performance from him. And ultimately, I think the Dallas Cowboys are just a more well-balanced team. They have a good defense. Offensively, I think they have more big-name pieces that are playmakers than the Tennessee Titans do. I think Marcus Mariota, per usual, will be good for a turnover or so. And ultimately, this is going to lead to the Dallas Cowboys at home winning this game. I think they can win this game by a little bit of a wider margin than people believe. I think by 7 to 10 points, somewhere around there. The spread, -6.5, so in that regards, I'd go ahead, take the over for the Dallas Cowboys. I like them to win this game outright, and we'll see, Dallas Cowboys fans. This game could potentially be the turning point of the season, and we could turn back in Week 16, look at this game and say, this is where the Dallas Cowboys turned it around and how they potentially became a wild card team. So with that, we wrap up our pick'em games of the week. Now we look to our locks of the week, starting with the Chicago Bears at the Buffalo Bills. Look, give me the Bears here. The Buffalo Bills don't know who they're going to play at quarterback at this point in time. And Trubisky, whether he is a good quarterback or not, he still has enough pieces to beat the Bills. That defense is going to be a factor as well. I like the Bears to get this victory on the road. Then Kansas City at Cleveland. Look, I just think there's too much turmoil in Cleveland right now. Even if those firings didn't occur, I'd still take the Chiefs. And now it just makes it an easier choice for me, honestly. Then Tampa Bay at Carolina. I think this can be a closer game than people expect. I think it'll be high scoring, but ultimately I do think Carolina and Cam Newton are salivating at that defensive matchup versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they can put up a nice amount of points and get the victory. And finally, I will go with the Tennessee Titans at the Dallas Cowboys. I like the Dallas Cowboys to win this game at home. I like Zeke. I think Amari Cooper will have a nice impact. Give me Dak Prescott over Marcus Mariota in that defense. I like the Dallas Cowboys to get the victory. And as always, let me know what you guys thought. Now, that wrapped up our locks of the week. Do you guys agree, disagree with the locks, with the pick'ems? Let me hear it in the comment section along with any other questions you guys might have. And don't forget, if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.